Hey everyone, this is Fabriello and welcome back to a new video. I finally managed to find the time to make one. More specifically, this is going to be a video response to EmperorFoxx, who just published, I think it was this morning, at least UK time, a very interesting list of his, or at least what he thinks are his most emotional and saddest deaths in gaming. A topic which I found very interesting, and I haven't heard a list like this in a long time, even though there are plenty on the internet. But it's always interesting to listen to this kind of list from a new perspective. So for this reason, decided to come up with a good list of my own, and in order to do a proper video response, because that's like deaths and these sad moments are fundamental, I say, in video games, because they can like offer us we can receive like these strong emotions, and they can make for timeless moments in gaming. But at the same time, while I was researching material for my list, I've noticed how subjective this topic actually is, because most of the entries in my list, you guys would probably don't give a shit about them, but all of them, in one way or the other, they evoke an emotional response from me, because I absorb these kind of moments different from all of you. So to give you an example, one of the most famous deaths in video games is probably Aerith in Final Fantasy VII, and this is not on my list because at the time when I played it, that I didn't give a shit about it. Kinda, I'm being very blunt about it, but that's true. Because the main reason why I didn't, and I still don't like Final Fantasy VII very much, it's because I didn't really care about these characters, and as a consequence, I didn't really care about the story. So when Sephiroth killed Aerith, I was like, oh damn, she's dead. Oh well, whatever. And also the fact that sometimes I don't really like when this sort of like very sad moments are too much in my face, or they're trying really, really hard to be tear jerkers. So with Aerith, again, I'm not just to kick on a dead horse, but to keep the example going. And she's stabbed by Sephiroth. Then you see all the hair, and then there's Cloud holding her in the lake or whatever it is, and then dropping her. You see her going down as a stone or something. I was like, come on, can we move on? I get it. It's supposed to be sad. And the same with other games. I mean, there are so many great moments that, like, for example, I haven't experienced some of the big ones. Like, again, I own, but I haven't played Last of Us, for example. And in many, many lists I've checked, Last of Us at least two big moments, consider some of the saddest one. I never played Red Dead Redemption, so I know about the big moment, the sad death at the end of the game, but I didn't experience it yet. So just, I can keep going, but I'm sure I give you, I make myself pretty clear. So these are moments which are sad and emotional, but to me, so once, like, when I experience them, they evoke an emotional response from me. But as I said, maybe they will not, or they did not from you. So without further ado, after this long introduction, just to properly explain my decisions, because this is going to be a top 12, since I do like my top 12s. And again, just more clarification, there are going to be multiple entries from the same series, just because I couldn't think of these many deaths in once I come up with this list. But all of them had their place in my heart, at least. And naturally, that goes without saying, major spoilers. So top 12, actually my personal top 12 saddest deaths and saddest moments in gaming. At number 12, we are starting with an unexpected one, because I saw this entry, because it came up to my mind almost immediately, but I saw it on just one list of the like dozen that I checked. Only one guy kind of bothered mentioning this, and that is the baby Metroid deaths in Super Metroid. So yes, this, like, the death of a fucking Metroid evoked more of an emotional response than that in Final Fantasy VII. So the reason is because it fits so well in the narrative of Metroid 2 and Super Metroid. If you play both of the game, you already know, I suppose, but in Metroid 2, Samus as the her mission is to basically exterminate the Metroid. It's a sort of genocide in a way because she has to eliminate an entire species from the face of the galaxy. It's kind of extreme. So, and the big twist at the end is that once you've defeated the Queen Metroid, there's still one egg that hatches in front of Samus, and she's ready to destroy this new threat. However, this baby Metroid coming out of the egg has a sort of like surrogate moment and started to see Samus as her mom. So, in a moment of humanity, I guess Samus decided not to kill this newborn Metroid, but instead she brings it to a scientific space lab with the amazing intro in Super Metroid that the last Metroid is in captivity, the galaxy is at peace. So timeless. And then of course we know that the baby Metroid got kidnapped by the space pirates and it's Samus's duty to save it. And the whole of Super Metroid, a fantastic game, takes place. And at the end of the game, there's the final battle against Mother Brain, the fucker leader of the space pirates. And in another great twist, I have to say, you are not able to defeat Mother Brain. There is that famous moment in which she blasts Samus against like a wall or something. You can see all your energy going down. And once it's like Mother Brain's ready to kill you, baby Metroid, now fully grown up, attacks her and sacrifices itself in order to protect and save Samus before the final battle. It's a really strong moment. Nothing like tear-jerking or to anything like that, but it's still very emotional in a way because you see, like, especially consider we're talking about the Metroid. When I played it as a kid, I mean, those things were fucking scary. But to see all this sort of like narrative arc for a Metroid, and in haunting and claustrophobic games like the Metroid series, I think it deserves commendation. It's something really, really well done by the creators of the series. So at number 12 we got Baby Metroid. At number 11, again, I'm surprised none of the dozen lists I've checked even mentioned this. And that is something that had an impact on me, even though I'm not nostalgic about this game, for a reason I will explain in a moment. And that is Chrono's death in Chrono Trigger. Again, no one mentioned this. But, and again, it's not that I gang up on Final Fantasy VII, but because of the hype of all of that, I mean, I remember a million people will keep saying that Aerith's death is so monumental and important because it was the first time that a main character, was killed in a video game. And that's bullshit. I mean, look at Chrono Trigger. The main character dies. Chrono gets disintegrated by Lavos. And the fact I was saying before, I'm not nostalgic for Chrono Trigger simply because I played it on a DES, not on the Super Nintendo. So if that's made like I had such an emotional response from playing this game some years ago, imagine what it would be if I played it like most of you guys have done on the Super Nintendo while I was a kid, more vulnerable to these things. And also, again, I mean, it's not every day that your main character fails, it's killed by the main villain. It's rather unexpected. So to see that epic moment with Chrono charging at Lavos, and all of a sudden he blasts this super laser that annihilates Chrono. I didn't expect it. I was shocked. And combined with, it's also like considering the fact that if you want, you can not bring Chrono back to life. I guess that will trigger a different ending. Because of course during my playthrough I resurrected Chrono because you can go back in time and save him, but it was a really, really big deal, and I don't understand why no one really acknowledge it. I mean, yes, sure, maybe it's not a tear-jerker as some others, but it's a really big moment in a game, and again, a moment that should be acknowledged as a very emotional moment. So Chrono's death from Chrono Trigger at number 11. At number 10, we got a classic of, obviously, I have to mention this, but it's interesting that it's only at number 10, and that is Lee's death in, of course, The Walking Dead. All of you know about this. I'm not going to talk about it too much. It's a very, very sad and powerful moment. So why it's not in my top 3 like most lists that I saw? For the simple reason that before, a bit of a spoiler for Foxx's list, before he mentioned it in his list, I forgot about it. I didn't think about it while I was making my own list. And then all of a sudden I said, oh yeah, that was a sad moment. But it for some reason it didn't stay with me, and contrary to others which I remember, like we'll talk about it later, like there is a moment in this list that I remember it very, very clearly for almost 20 years that since I played that game till the end, because it's, as you see, it's something that happened at the end of that game, but I remember that clearly and very vividly, and it still evokes emotional response from me from a game that I played 20 years ago. Then something that I played some years, like a couple of years ago or something. But naturally, with all of this, it better be on this list. It's a really, really sad and emotional moment, especially the wonderful relationship between Clementine and Lee, developed throughout the game, with all like the madness and the horrors of the zombie apocalypse. The two of them managed to get really close. It's sort of like father-daughter relationship, and she's forced to either kill him or abandon him. Really, really sad. So I don't need to talk too much about it. Most of you probably know it. Who doesn't? So at number 10, we got Lee's death from The Walking Dead. At number 9, we got an interesting one, and that is the death of Chiaki Nanami from Danganronpa 2. Danganronpa 2 is the first game that actually started to show like very powerful moments, to me at least. And Chiaki's death, it is really the one that forced me in a way of like an emotional response out of me, because up until that moment, some of the deaths are almost comical, but other are really trying to get an emotional response. But this one was kind of out of nowhere to me, especially because by playing the game, she was the character I was getting the closer to. Especially because at the beginning, she's a really close and shy character because she's the ultimate gamer, so she's kind of socially awkward. But progressively, you can get closer to her. She opens up, and she's kind of a cool character, especially like she has an important role in the story. So in a way, she kind of sacrificed herself for the main character in order to defeat Monokuma. But in doing so, I remember I was really, really emotional about her death. I was like, oh damn it, she's like one of the most likable character in this cast. I really, really wanted her to survive this craziness of Danganronpa 2, but it didn't happen, and it was very unfortunate, because it also like certain moments are really, really touching. And I remember that once I watched the Danganronpa anime, which was kind of a disappointment if I have to be honest. At least it was alright, but I don't think it really works as an anime, at least to me. I mean, there is a scene when like the main character of Danganronpa 2 sees Chiaki again, and it's like, it's a really touchy moment because you can see the two of them have a special relationship, and watching her die was really, really heartbreaking. So at number 9, we got Chiaki Nanami's death in Danganronpa 2. Number 8, it's an interesting one. It's again one of the sad moments I always come up to. I always remember this, and even more interesting, it concerns a boss, not like one of the main characters or one of the party members, which to me makes it even more interesting. It's in Breath of Fire 1, but we're going all the way back to that. And it regards Cheryl. I think that's how you pronounce her name. She's a sort of like middle of the road boss, like halfway kind of a game. She's one of the generals of the main villain. So basically in Breath of Fire 1, you play as Ryu, and it is your duty to save your sister from the clutches of the evil Black Dragon Empire, who's wreaking havoc around the world. And one of your duties is to defeat these generals, and Cheryl is one of them. But as you play that section of the game concerning like getting ready for the battle against her, you started to discover more about her. And especially, I cannot remember the name, but there is a NPC. There is a guy in the village close to her fortress or dungeon who comes to you and say like, wait a second, Cheryl is not a bad person. So you start to know that he's like her childhood friend, and the reason why she's following the Black Dragon Empire is because she has a sort of revenge feeling towards her village, because all of them gang up on her because she was different. Basically, she's like half human, half monster. But again, he keeps saying like she is not bad. She's a good person, but she was driven away by fear of the others. So, and the great moment happens after you have like the battle against her, you defeat her, but again, that guy comes in and basically allows her to survive the battle. You do not kill her. However, later, like she kind of helps your party. If I remember, like I haven't played Breath of Fire 1 in a long time, but I remember vividly like that she's killed in a way like by one of her comrades, so one of the other bosses, basically, and one of the other generals. She's attacked by surprise and killed, and then basically, for what I can remember, I'm sure something happened in the middle, but then you can see her fortress dungeon crumbling down, and in a way like, but I'm pretty sure that she sacrificed herself to allow you to escape or something like that. But then here comes the great moment. Basically, you return to the village and you see the ruins of this fortress. And you can skip this. That's the incredible thing. You can skip this wonderful moment. But if you go back to the ruins of the fortress, then you're welcomed by a really, really touchy music with that 16-bit sweetness. And you see two kids playing, and you realize it's that guy and Cheryl as kids. And you can see them being very close, very happy to see, like, I want to be with you forever, we'll be friends forever, something like that. And then you see the two kids running away, suggesting obviously that they're dead. And that was really out of nowhere. And from a game like Breath of Fire 1, which, as you know, I love the Breath of Fire series, and Breath of Fire 1, it's a bit rough around the edges. But to show a moment like this, it was so sad and touching at the same time. I was really, well done, well played, Breath of Fire 1. And also, there is another very sad moment, is like the battle against Sarah, Ryu's sister. Basically, the entire purpose of the game is saving her, but she's brainwashed. Oh no! And you're forced to kill her. And it's a very sad moment again. So Breath of Fire, it's a series that it's no stranger like to sadness, death, and emotional moments, as we will see once more. A bit of spoiler, but definitely this whole story and later death and the aftermath of Cheryl's death from Breath of Fire 1 at number 8. At number 7, that's something that I'm really surprised no one mentioned it. Again, with the whole thing of Aerith being the first one, that it's not true. Just look at the Phantasy Star series, and in particular, my most emotional moment was in Phantasy Star 4 with Alice's death. Again, that was really powerful because it's a character you grow very attached to. She is always with you since the beginning. She's a sort of like, she's a mentor, but also sort of big sister figure to the protagonist. And she's very cool, she's very strong. But then, when you face Zio, that bastard, for the first time, he blasts her with a sort of like death ray from Deathfalls and something, and she falls ill, and you cannot do anything to save her. You watch her die. And it's a very emotional moment, also because the way like cutscenes work in Phantasy Star 4, it's in the way of like anime-style comic book. So you see all this panel with getting darker and darker, and then Alice dying with all the characters the desperation, all of them crying. It was a very shocking moment because, as I say, first, she's a really likable character, even though she's there for a small portion of the game, but she definitely left an impact. She definitely left her mark in the game, and her death was really, really emotional. So, very well done. At number 8, Alice's death in Phantasy Star 4, The End of the Millennium. Number 6 is a classic. Of course, I have to mention Mordin's death in Mass Effect 3. True to be told, Mass Effect 3 might be my actual favorite game in the entire series. I don't care about the controversy with the ending. I mean, I was very happy with the one I got. I didn't feel the need to download the alternative or the different ending. That was completely unnecessary to me. I refused to do it. The reason why I actually absolutely love Mass Effect 3, even more than Mass Effect 2, which is a fantastic game, of course, simply because of big moments such as this, Mordin's death. And you all know about it. It is, again, one of the most famous video game characters' death of all time, but it's a fantastic, as well, story of redemption in a way, because Mordin created the genophages, like destroying the Krogans, but at the same time now he wants to cure them, and he sacrifices life for them to make sure that they actually have a cure and a future. It's a fantastic story and a great, great unforgettable character. And fun fact, actually, the first time I played Mass Effect 2, I remember that I made a mistake in the assignments during the final chapter of the game, so when you were attacking the collector ship. And I actually lost Mordin in that, so if I would have continued playing that file, which is still there, but I wouldn't see this whole story with Mordin in Mass Effect 3, which would be a huge shame. And that's also the really strong replayability of this game and why they're so amazing as well. But definitely, of course, you cannot have Mordin's death in this kind of list. So at number 6. At number 5, we got another one that no one mentioned, but for some reasons, this was really emotional to me. And it's the battle and the aftermath of this battle between against Popola and Devola in Nier. Again, as I say, no one mentioned this. They're too busy talking about like some moments in Call of Duty or other. But I remember playing Nier, and once I have to fight against Popola and Devola, I was really against the idea. I really, really didn't want to fight them. And especially then, considering also the amazing music played in the background, which is, as you know, like a character on its own in Nier. But once they because you're basically on a mission to save Yona from the Shadow Lord. So you're finally reached the Shadow Lord's castle. You're going towards its section, and all of a sudden, Devil and Poplar are there, and they've been on your side since the beginning of the game. They've supported you. They've been your friends. They were Yona's friends. There were those beautiful scenes where they're singing to like the kids or the others. That amazing song. And then it's like you have to fight them, and especially like once they start to reveal the truth about Project Gestalt and the truth about the world and all of that, and starting to reveal more about the fantastic lore of Nier. It was a really emotional moment to me, especially once you kill one of the two. I think Popola is the first one to go down. There is that scene with Devola losing her mind and saying, like, do you want me to stop? All that. And the reason why I also mentioned the aftermath of the battle is because connected to that, it's also Emil's sacrifice. All of the same moment. It was because, again, Emil is such a likable character in Nier. And he sacrificed himself to stop Devola. And this whole part of Nier was a complete emotional train wreck to me. Again, just to clarify, none of these moments, with the exception of the number 1, none of them made me cry. Just to be clear. It's not that I'm saying like this just to say, I'm a manly man, I don't cry. I got emotional, but I certainly don't cry for something like this. But I was really invested in these characters, in this story, and to be forced to kill characters that I really like, I trust, and consider on my side, it was really hard and really, I was, again, was very emotional, cringy. So number 5, the whole final chapter basically of Nier with Popula, Devula, and Emil's death. Great stuff. Number 4, we're getting back to the Danganronpa series, but this time to Danganronpa V3, and more specifically, what I consider the most emotional part of the entire Danganronpa series. It's the death of Kaede Akamatsu. She, again, this came out of nowhere and beat the other candidates to me, which is the death of Kaito, which is the main difference because, as I said a moment ago, Kaede's death was out of nowhere. I really didn't see it coming. Kaito's death was really built up throughout the game. You knew it was coming sooner or later. But it was so emotional because Kaito had such a big impact on both Shuichi, who after Kaede's death, he becomes the main character, and especially Maki, who is probably one of my favorite characters in the entire series. And his death was very, very emotional as well. But with Kaede, again, she's the first character you use in the game. She's the protagonist, apparently. But again, once you realize that she has committed a crime, a murder, and there's no way out, and by the rules of Monokuma, she is killed. It's a really big fucking moment. I really didn't expect. I was like, oh my god, no! Because again, she's a very likable character. And also, the fact that she, throughout the first part of the game, she develops a really nice friendship with Shuichi, as I said, who will become the next main character. And she really encourages him to be who he is, as like the greatest detective, like the ultimate detective. There it is. It was so emotional, especially once they threw at me that wonderful piano piece by Debussy. It was really, oh, this is really too much. Again, I didn't cry, but I was feeling it in my throat. It was like, oh, damn it, Danganronpa. It was a really, really great and emotional moment. Number three, this is, again, one of the saddest things I ever experienced, and that is the bad ending in Breath of Fire 2, especially the bad ending that involves Nina, even more than the one that involves Kat. Basically, throughout Breath of Fire 2, you can develop a sort of love interest between Ryu, and you can choose between Nina and Kat. If you choose Nina, and for some reason you decide to go for the bad ending, it's a really heartbreaking experience, because you got this, the whole idea is that basically Ryu sacrificed himself. He transforms into the Kaiser Dragon and blocks the entry to this other dimension from which demons and all evil will come and destroy the world. So he sacrifices himself to save the world. In doing so, however, by sitting in this cave, he falls asleep, and it's heavily hinted that he will never wake up again. Just what happened to his mom, basically. Just to clarify, like, Breath of Fire 2 is a fucking-tastic story. I love that game so much. Again, one of the main reasons why I love the series. It's my favorite RPG series of all time. So there is this whole story. So you got Ryu falling asleep forever, and all of a sudden you see Nina coming out, like, reaching for Ryu on her own. Like, she hugs the dragon and says something like, "You are my best friend," or something like, you will be my best friend forever. Something like that. It's with this sad 16-bit music. It's a really, really devastating moment. Again, didn't cry, but it was very close to when I saw it, because once I saw it, I was like, fuck that, I'm not going for something like that. I want the great ending. But it's such a sad moment. I mean, again, you got the main character sacrificing himself. You know that Ryu will never wake up again. And Nina hugs him, she hugs him and say those wonderful words. It's, oh! A great moment, and very emotional indeed. So the bad ending from Breath of Fire 2. Number 2, we got that moment I was mentioning. This is something that stick with me for almost 20 years. And it's one of the most emotional moments I ever experienced in terms of like a character dying. And that is from Legend of Dragoon, Rose's Sacrifice. Basically, the main reason, or at least one of the main reasons to me to play Legend of Dragoon, which is one of my favorite games of all time, it's Rose's story. It's just a fantastic character arc that develops throughout this gigantic game, and she started as a very close and mysterious character that by the end she's a full-fledged out fantastic character, open to the party, all secrets revealed, which are amazing. Just to mention, like, I love the story of the black monster, and once you start to understand what that means, it's so good. And then you got like this epic and very long final battle against the real villain of the entire game. And I do mean it's really long. I mean, the dude has 4 different theme songs throughout the whole battle. So you got that, and once you finally have defeated the evil Melbuframan, is like all dimension is crumbling down. A very cliche ending there. I love that. And all the gang is escaping as fast as possible in order to survive the battle. But they're not gonna make it. Oh no, what's going to happen? And then you see Rose stopping together with Zig, and I was there with my DualShock controllers like, no, Rose, don't you dare, don't do this to me, for fuck's sake, Rose. And she, just thinking about it made me emotional, as you can see. Like, she turns around and faces the explosion and sacrifices herself and says those words, I cannot remember, but basically she acknowledged that she doesn't have her place anymore in the world because she's from another time, or like her presence is not necessary anymore. She can finally rest together with his loved ones. And it's a really great ending, a really great and satisfactory ending from such an epic game. And again, I was so like, no, Rose, because for all of her amazing development, Rose, it's, if not my favorite, one of my favorite characters in video games ever. I mean, and obviously once you have such an attachment to a character, seeing her die, especially at the end of the game, I was really like, I was a mess. And I mean, there also like another powerful moment in Legend of Dragoon. It's obviously Lavitt's death at the beginning of the game, kind of the beginning, like towards the end of this one, kind of. Especially because then he returns, kinda, and then at the end with the wonderful end credits in the game, like with that fantastic music, you see Dart finally fulfilling his promise with Lavitz and sharing that drink with him. I mean, such a great ending of such a fantastic, timeless masterpiece of a game. I love it. But for fuck's sake, Rose, that really destroyed me. But it was a really happy ending though, with that exception, of course. So really great, sad moment indeed. Rose's Sacrifice at the end of Legend of Dragoon, my number 2. Number 1, and for some reason, all those lists I've checked, no one bothered to mention this, but this is the only video game in my entire life that made me cry. And no one acknowledged this, and I know that all of you played it cry. To the Moon! I mean, the whole fucking game. The entire point of the game is to be a very sad and heartbreaking experience. And as I said, it's the only game that made me cry. And once I played To the Moon, that is the last time I cried in, I don't know how many years ago. And since then, I don't remember. But I was crying like a baby. And as I said, it's not easy to make me cry, because I absorb this thing differently from other people. Like, I can cry, I guarantee you. Like, To the Moon proved it. I was crying non-stop, especially after that fucking moment. I think it's like, and especially considering this is a 4-hour indie game that destroyed me emotionally. That needs to be highlighted, acknowledged, and praised. while everyone's too busy talking about Aerith and Call of Duty and whatever. All great moments, I'm sure, but this, oh my god. Especially that moment, as I said, I think it's in the middle of the game. It's when I don't remember his name, but the character who's dying, basically, remember the time he met River for the first time. It's such a touching moment. And to think what will happen from there, it's even more heartbreaking. But the thing is, you see, with the wonderful soundtrack in the background, these two kids meeting, and they sit and watch the starry sky together, and then River points at the star and saying, "That reminds me of a bunny." I was like, oh my fucking god, and I start crying. I can sense like emotions coming because it's such an emotional moment. It was so sad, the whole experience. And one of the reasons that made To the Moon even sadder to me, it's the fact that there is a happy ending when they are both seated together in the rocket to the moon, and they kind of like hold each other's hand. But you know, that's not true. I mean, it's, or at least I couldn't accept it, because that's not what happened. The whole point of the game is these two scientists building these fake memories for this person who's dying, just to make him die happy. But it's terrible, I think. I mean, it's a great ending. It's a wonderful, and of course I was crying at that point. I mean, the gates were open. I couldn't stop crying. But oh man, it's such a tragic story, but wonderfully told, and absolutely love To the Moon. But that's by far the saddest and most emotional response I ever had from a video game, especially. And I never thought that a video game would make me cry, but To the Moon did, and did it hardly. So this is my list of my top 12 saddest moments, including like death, sacrifices, or whatever, from video games. Definitely let me know what you think, guys, and I highly suggest to make your own list. And also put Fox's list in the description below so you can check that out. Highly recommended to check it out. If you haven't, subscribe to Fox's channel, of course, if you aren't already, since it's a great absolutely love this channel. So as I said, definitely let me know what you think, and thanks so much for watching. Take care.